Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Recently, the Liberal Party of Canada decided to insert an amendment to Bill C-21, and they did this very late in the day after debate had already happened, after they'd heard from witnesses and so forth. And so you might think that they're going to make like a little tweak or a little sort of adjustment, but instead what they're doing is they're adding a provision that will ban virtually every center-fire semi-automatic rifle in Canada. And you might think, okay, isn't this out of scope? Because amendments to bills are sort of supposed to stay within the idea of the original bill, and the original bill didn't include any sweeping gun bans like this. Well, the Liberal Party has decided that it's within scope, notwithstanding the fact that that makes no sense whatsoever, and so they're going to allow themselves to do the thing. Yeah. So you might think, why are they doing this at this late stage? Normally the democratic process, we expect that any of these things are going to be introduced through the House and they're going to get proper debate and discussion and so forth, and they're circumventing all of that. Why now? Well, I'm sure it has nothing to do with the very difficult questions they're being asked, like, say, which 12 MPs received funding from China during the election? Or what happened to all that money that was spent on the ArriveCan app? Or say, I wonder, what about those questions around the Emergencies Act and whether it was justified to invoke it? Because, of course, invoking the Emergencies Act involves a massive curtailing of civil liberties and, is kind of something we should all be a little nervous about. Well, all of those questions get to go away because now the news cycle is about the gun ban, and that's what everyone is paying attention to. So they get to basically reset the news cycle, and they also get to punish the people who are criticizing them, because more firearm owners tend to be right-wing rather than left-wing, and even the left-wing ones tend to be NDP supporters rather than Liberal supporters as a sort of general principle. So this allows them to both punish their critics and change the channel on these, difficult questions. And lots of the voters are just going to go, okay, yeah, we're going to allow this, instead of asking critical questions, which maybe you should at this point. All right, let's talk about what exactly they're proposing to ban here. So the text of the new amendment, the sort of broad text, is a firearm that is a rifle or shotgun that is capable of discharging center-fire ammunition in a semi-automatic manner and that is designed to accept a detachable cartridge magazine with a capacity greater than 5 cartridges of the type for which the firearm was originally designed. Okay, that's a big wordy definition, and this is also a dishonest or misleading definition because it's intended to sort of confuse the public, or at least it seems to be intended to confuse the public. And I'm already seeing kind of liberal mouthpieces out there who are arguing the deceptive argument. And so I'll explain how this is deceptive. Where it says designed to accept a detachable cartridge magazine with a capacity greater than 5 cartridges, I'm already seeing people out there saying, well, I mean, you can still have semi-automatic rifles. They just can't have the detachable cartridge magazine, greater than 5 rounds. And why would you need more than 5 rounds? That's always the question. Why would you need whatever? Well, we're not creatures of needs. I mean, unless you're in a maximum security prison, we typically expect that people will get more than they need. But regardless, let's talk about the definition of designed as it's been interpreted by the RCMP, because we can look at the example of the Ruger 1022 rifle. There are magazines built for the Ruger 1022 rifle, which, in some cases are drum magazines or sort of larger magazines. And the RCMP decided that these were also designed for use in the Charger pistol. And this is significant in terms of what kind of capacity those magazines are legally allowed to have. Now, this includes those magazines that were designed and manufactured before anyone knew or had any idea for the Charger pistol. So the idea of designed basically assumes that you have a time machine or the ability to see the future. And let me tell you, if I had a time machine or the ability to see the future, I would be winning the lottery like every week, and that's not happening. So I'm going to assume that this is not something that you guys have either, because I haven't been seeing you on the news of, local Canadian keeps winning lottery. Isn't that weird? Yeah, so when designed basically assumes that you can violate the laws of causality and physics. Um, it is kind of a meaningless term. All that this means is that you can fit a magazine of larger than 5 rounds in it. Of course, a magazine well is just an opening with, sort of clips to make it attach and so forth. And so anybody can make a magazine of whatever capacity that will fit into that particular mag well. It's like saying that you are going to ban power outlets in your house, which can have a fridge plugged into them. Well, the outlet doesn't know whether the thing you're plugging into it is a fridge or a computer or whatever, so that would just ban all power outlets. So, the other thing that is really sort of dishonest or disingenuous here is the detachable part, because lots of people have said, hey, listen, you can just get an internal magazine. Well, so here's an example of something that wouldn't meet that definition. This is, and I'm getting snagged up here on my sling, this is an SKS rifle. And so this one would not be included in the definition. And I'm just going to show here that, chamber's empty. It's got a trigger lock. We're being safe here. This is a safe direction. There's nobody that way. But there is no detachable magazine because this bit right here is the magazine. And you can see it's attached. It doesn't go anywhere. The only thing that opening this does is it lets you dump the cartridges if for some reason you want to clear them out really fast, like say you're unloading the gun. So great, this would not be included. And I mean, when you look at it, this is not a particularly scary firearm because, they're going to say that it's a weapon of war, and I'll sort of talk about that, but it really doesn't have a lot of the features that you'd expect of a modern firearm. However, when you're thinking, hey, and this example here actually is autographed. This is an autograph from Adam Baldwin. That's the Baldwin who, prefers not to kill people on movie sets. Just kind of saying. But, yeah, so because this one wouldn't be included and the M1 Garand wouldn't be included, they added them specifically. So when they say, oh, well, you can have it so long as it doesn't have a detached, so long as it's got a fixed magazine, well, then they'll just ban it by name. There's a few sort of strange examples out there, sort of unusual firearms that they haven't yet added, but I'm sure they're going to get around to it. So yeah, this is basically a ban on all center fire semi-automatics, and they have proposed to specifically ban the SKS. And I mentioned the sort of weapon of war language, so let's talk about that. Well, the SKS was actually used in wars, and the problem is, however, when you look at it, it's got a little marking right here. You probably can't read it on the video, but that marking says 1953. That's where this particular firearm came from, is, from 1953. That's when this one was made. It's a fairly dated firearm. And because of that, it is missing a lot of the features that you would expect from a firearm that is going to be used in, any sort of armed conflict nowadays. As an example, let's talk about, mounting an optic to this. If you wanted to mount something to this where you could, where you have sort of an optical sight rather than these iron sights that you can see on it, well, the SKS doesn't really mount an optic well, because this plate here is not a stable platform. Normally you'd mount an optic here so that you could sight down it, but this piece moves. And so it won't hold zero and holding zero basically means that the aim stays unchanged if you mount in that spot. So there are ways that people have mounted an optic to it. They're really ugly. They're really not ideal. And as mentioned, there's no detachable magazine. This is, and there's a reason why they're not really making combat arms out of wood anymore. This thing is heavy. It's a very substantial rifle. It's not something you're going to want to carry around or anything like that. However, it was once used as a combat arm, but there is a constant trend in firearms that military arms become civilian arms as technology marches on. The Lee Enfield was used in, a whole lot of armed conflicts, but now just people use it for hunting. And the Lee Enfield is a bolt action rifle. They haven't decided to ban it yet. But the SKS is a very popular hunting rifle. And part of the reason is that you used to be able to get one of these things for like $100 or even cheaper. People used to buy crates of these things. And it's estimated that there are literally hundreds of thousands of SKSs out there. In fact, just about every gun owner I know got an SKS at some point, early in shooting, and either they decided that they didn't like it and sold it to someone else in order to get a better rifle, or they just, they still have it. Lots and lots of gun owners have SKSs. They're also a popular hunting rifle. They shoot a 7.62 by 39 cartridge, which is good enough to hunt just about everything that you might find in North America. And because they were cheap, and sort of ubiquitous, they have been really popular on reserves in Canada. This is, if there is an Indigenous rifle in Canada, it would be the SKS. There's lots of people, the number, I couldn't count how many Indigenous hunters I know indicate that it's the SKS that gets them their deer meat, their moose meat, their elk meat, whatever it is. Year after year, they're reliable, they're dependable, they're just durable guns. So when this ban goes through, if it goes through, this is going to have a tremendous impact on Indigenous Canadians, many of whom are probably not necessarily going to realize that their firearm has been banned. There's going to be a communication issue because a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention to this kind of news. And so what you'll probably see for literally decades from now is people who have their hunting rifle facing incredibly serious charges, possession of a prohibited firearm with ammunition, which is a very serious thing. The Supreme Court has said that it's not a charge for which a mandatory minimum should apply. However, they have said that the usual sentence for that should land somewhere around 3 years. So, we're talking about incarcerating a lot of people who have hunting rifles, and especially a lot of Indigenous Canadians. This is absolutely ridiculous. But they didn't stop with the SKS. As mentioned, they also added the M1 Garand and 300 pages of specifically identified firearms, which means that if you want to know if a particular gun is legal or illegal, it's not a matter of just looking at its traits and identifying what kind of firearm this is. It's also a matter of reading this phone book in order to go through and determine if every element of this is, if it's on this list somewhere, or if it's a variant of something on this list. And let's talk about the use of the word variant, because they say that a particular firearm made by GSG is a variant of the MP40. Notwithstanding the fact that it shares, so far as I know, basically no parts with the MP40, it's a completely different kind of firearm. It's just made to kind of look like one. It's kind of, if I paint my face green, I don't actually become the Incredible Hulk. I can't throw cars. That's kind of the issue. It's, it's a Honda Civic with a Porsche kit, and it's, it doesn't do the things. And you know what? I'm not going to make the obvious joke here about the face paint. I guess I did. So all of this means essentially that you're going to need, a degree in military or firearms history in order to interpret the firearms regulations and the criminal code in this. This is, I know that this is going to confound lawyers a lot. This is going to confound the courts. How on earth is it supposed to be accessible to the average hunter or farmer? Especially considering that the average hunter or farmer, not all hunters and farmers are actually the average. There's a huge range. Our firearms laws right now contemplate that some of the people who might be applying might be, for instance, illiterate, and that, there's provisions to allow them to still get licenses because we recognize that they might be sustenance hunters, they might be hunters for cultural reasons. And so, but they're still supposed to figure all this out, notwithstanding the fact that it's going to confound, even experts. What they're proposing to do here is not only a massive attack on hunters and farmers, and in fact, some of the firearms named are not, semi-automatic firearms at all. They've named the Weatherby, which is a very popular hunting rifle. Yeah, they've said that they're not going to go after hunters and farmers. This is absolutely going after hunters and farmers. There are a ton of hunting and, farming Canadians who are going to be looking in their gun safe and realizing that they now have firearms that are going to be banned by this. This seems like a very poor idea. I just can't really reconcile it with any sort of notion of sense. And as mentioned, this appears to be something that is politically motivated. People are saying, well, this will save lives. Well, probably not. And if it does, not an appreciable number compared to, the economic costs here. This is going to put many businesses out of business. This is going to cost many Canadians tens of thousands of dollars of property. In the hearings, they said that, a firearm isn't property, but I mean, that kind of defies the definition of property. Yeah, I could rant about this, but I guess I'll play here a little clip of Justin Trudeau talking about his plans.
I mean, the fear in here is that the first step towards registering your guns is just the first step towards taking away guns from everyone. That's never going to happen because here in Canada we have a culture that has grown up with guns and that respects the need to go out into the wilderness and shoot things from time to time. It's hard.
So as you can see, he is clearly a liar. We shouldn't trust anything that comes out of his mouth. And all of the things that they're going to be saying in, follow-up years about, oh, this is going to, have whatever effects, or this isn't going to affect hunters and farmers or whatever else. They're just not being honest with Canadians. This will have a tremendous impact. And the other thing I will mention, I talked about sort of the mouthpieces before. The Liberal Party seems to have great online game in terms of shaping the narrative on social media. If you want to watch this for yourself, go on to any of the Canadian subreddits and post something that is sort of pointedly critical of the Liberal Party. And there's a thing you can observe, which is, you can see it starts to get upvotes. People are sort of saying, oh, I like this comment. And then all of a sudden it'll get hit with something like 60 downvotes. And that'll happen in the space of a fraction of a second. You can sit there hitting refresh and you can see it's going from, 5 upvotes to negative 55, right in that fraction of a second. That's clearly bot farm activity. And, this is going on. And right now on Twitter, I'm seeing a lot of people all with the same point. And so you're going to see this as a major sort of part of their social media drive, which is, I'm a hunter and this won't affect me. And when you see that, start digging into those people, have a look at their, comment history, because a whole lot of them sort of started existing about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. When I said that, they're not necessarily being honest with Canadians, that includes this kind of policy. Personally, if I was in power, this sort of deceptive social media manipulation is something that I'd want to, put as an unfair elections practice. But, yeah. So I guess those are some initial comments. I will have follow-up comments because there's a lot to this and there's only so much I can say in one video. But yeah, those are sort of my preliminary thoughts. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. I know that liking this video kind of feels wrong given the the content of it, but it really does help sort of the algorithm here. Uh, yeah. I am beyond frustrated. But I also want to thank my Patreon supporters here at the $50 level, Canada's National Firearms Association, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Babe and Luxor. And at the $20 level, I want to give a particular shout out to Forest River Outfitters, who sent me a sort of very nice message. So I just kind of wanted to call them out here. As well as Mark, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, and Vicky. Thank you as well to my supporters at the $10 level who are going to be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this has armed you with knowledge. See you next time.